Work stoppages in the U.S. are reaching record highs. Researchers at Cornell University estimate nearly 362,000 workers have gone on strike in 2023. That's compared with more than 36,000 over the same time period 2 years ago. Hollywood had been on hold since July. Nearly 300,000 UPS workers prepared to strike before a deal was reached, and of course, the ongoing UAW strike. So, why are we seeing a massive increase in work stoppages? Joining us this morning, Professor of Business at Wayne State University, Marick Masters here on my right, and CEO of the lead group, Mark Esley, on my left. And Marick, we will start with you. Can you just give us, I would say, an overview of the historical significance of labor unions from, decades ago to today?
Well, labor unions historically have focused on bettering wages and getting good benefits for their workers. And one of the tools they've used to do that has been the strike, which is a method of imposing pressure on employers to concede at the negotiating table. We've seen a rise in strike activity this year, I think, because of three reasons. One is that we've had a long history of stagnating or declining wages. Two, we've had a recent spike in inflation, which caused people to fall behind economically, despite whatever wage gains they may get. And the third, I think, is that the pandemic made people realize just how vulnerable they were in this economy. And they're looking for representation, perhaps by unions, to give them more security in the workplace, a better standard of living. And at this particular time period, that has become an issue which has put labor and management into conflict in such industries as the entertainment industry, also in the transportation delivery industry, such as you saw with the Teamsters and UPS, and now you see it in the auto industry.
Okay, and before I get to you, Mark, I have two follow-ups with what you said. One, do you believe then that the COVID-19 pandemic maybe helped workers get to maybe more of what they need or deserve in their jobs?
Well, I think it sparked them to think about how they can collectively organize, because people realized that they had a lot in common and they had a lot of vulnerabilities, that you can be going along fine just one day, but a healthcare crisis or anything else can make you highly vulnerable and you can lose your job. And you really don't have any security. I think those workers that were represented by unions at that time realized that they had a cushion there, that unions could protect them in that transition as we had to shut down the economy.
Okay, and let's move to Mark here. What do you think so far about, obviously Marick gave us this historical significance. What are the advantages of joining a union? It doesn't matter what the union is, whatever your line of work is, but advantages.
The biggest advantage is that the union is supposed to have your best interests at heart, and certainly they have an understanding of what's happening in the marketplace. And so bottom line is, at the end of the day, is they're going to protect me. In theory, they're supposed to protect me. And it's supposed to save you from individually negotiating your own individual deals specifically. So that's probably the biggest advantage of paying a union due and joining a union.
On the flip side, what if they don't protect you? What are the disadvantages?
Well, the disadvantage of not joining a union is you don't have that same level of protection. For example, strike funds. So we're seeing this with the UAW. They're offering $500 per week if people qualify for a strike fund. Right, that's $2,000 a month for up to several months. If you're not part of the union, you don't have those types of benefits associated with those who are part of the union.
A lot of people, I feel like this is a pretty political issue. Yeah. Unions one side or the other. When you look at the disadvantages, it kind of sounded like to me you are pro-union, I assume, from that answer, or
I'm not,
maybe?
No, I'm just trying to give you the facts.
Okay, sure. I mean, when it gets broken down to it, though, does it just depend on what your job field is, whether or not you should then join a union, what's available?
Yeah, I think it's based on, yes, it's based on the industry that you're working in. I mean, the automotive industry is a very tough industry. Let's just be honest about it. Years ago, these individuals worked 12-hour days. They still work 12-hour days. I remember growing up in Detroit back in the day, back in the 70s, there were wildcat strikes because people would just walk off the assembly line in July when it was 95 degrees outside. So the unions are there to protect you, and I think from that perspective, people appreciate it in this town.
Okay, I'll ask you gentlemen both this question. Marick, we'll start with you. You said we talked about Teamsters, we've got SAG-AFTRA on strike, the writers, possibly even the video game creators, UAW here. Why so many strikes within this last 2-year period?
Well, I think right now it's those three factors that I mentioned, they intersect. And also it's the timing, contract expiration dates, when they time in the same year, you're going to see more strike activity just because of that. But the pressures are built up now, and workers feel that they have fallen behind. I'll give you just one statistic which demonstrates that. From 1979 to now, that 90% of the workforce, the workers, their income, real adjusted for inflation, has gone up just 28%. For the top 1%, it's gone up over 200%. They look at that gap and they think something is really wrong here, a mix in our political economy, and we need to address it. And unions are, I think, essential to a free and democratic society as a collective power to counter corporate power. And so that's, from a philosophical point of view, where I think they bring advantage to the table.
I think what you said, I want to get to that. We're going to obviously talk to you guys in the next segment, but reminded me about the gap between the top 1% and those in the labor unions. Mark, with you, what do you think are factors that lead to a strike in any industry?
Any industry is always number one, wages. Wages. They feel like people feel like they're falling behind. If you get the cost of living over the last several years, many workers would tell you that their cost of living is actually behind when you factor in inflation. They look at the rise of other materials over the years. So people, number one reason, quite frankly, is wages. Number two, healthcare, benefits, right? Number three, hours. Am I protected in terms of safety? Do I have to work 40 hours a week? Do I have to work 32 hours a week? Whatever the case might be. But the number one reason, for the most part, wages.
And then before we let you guys go on this last question here, I've been out 12 days. The UAW's been on strike 12 days, and I've talked to so many people out there. $500 a week on the strike pay. How can you support yourself? You're fighting for what you need and you want for the majority of people that are out there striking, but you have your own bottom line to look out for. How can you support yourself and your family?
I hope that people save appropriately in anticipation of the strike. Number two is, excuse me, there's been some discussion that some people are going to take part-time jobs. So you're finding some people, I was reading over the weekend, where some people are actually starting to go to restaurants and get part-time opportunities, making $15, $16 an hour just to help make ends meet. But the bottom line is that I hope that people, thinking the strike was going to come about, properly start to save in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, Mark Esley to my left, Marick Masters on my right. We'll have much more from both these gentlemen when we come back. We'll discuss the latest on the UAW strike. Stay with us.